Welcome to the Kingdom of Pod. Jeff Caves here with a couple of news items brought to you by Bet Online. Boise State's coaching staff gets a little bit of turnover, unexpected, but if you're following the news, perhaps you knew the other shoe could drop. And finally, Hank Bachmeier, it seems, has found a home, but we've thought that once before. Let's get to coaching staff news, okay? And Keith Bhonapha apparently is reportedly, according to Bruce Feldman, pretty good source, taken the job at Oregon State as a running backs coach. What does that bring up, right? How do we read into this? Well, I think the first thing that goes through people's mind is what's wrong with Boise State? Why would he leave? Does he have a poor relationship? Are they lesser than Oregon State? Is there some relationship issue on the staff? I would say yes to all of it, possibly, because none of us are behind those closed doors, but it's not any of it the end of the world. Now, I can understand some of the anxiety towards a program losing momentum. Keith was not there that long. It was his second stint. Did he use Boise State until something better came along? Was he not happy with Boise State once he came back and looked around him and didn't think it was good? Well, if you subscribe to the theory that Keith Bhonapha is the ultimately best judge of a coach and a program, then maybe you should be concerned. But if you're like me, hell, I don't know. Keith's a great guy. I know him. I've known him a long time. I think he's well respected as a great coach. He's trusted to be detail oriented because he coaches special teams. And I think his reputation is as much about his ability to recruit kids and then coach them once they get there and take care of them and do what he promised. So I do know those things about him, but I don't believe the sky is falling. But I'm not ignorant or naive, and I think neither are any of you. And sure, there could be some challenges there. I think the first thing I looked at is money. And let's look at the money trail. So Oregon State loses their running backs coach 3 days ago, who takes off to Baylor. His name is A.J. Stewart. Now, did A.J. have a pre-existing relationship with somebody at Baylor? That really doesn't matter to this situation here, does it? The bottom line is I looked at his pay, and I could not find what he's going to be paid at Baylor University, but I do know what he is leaving behind. Now, he was at $270,000, and he was scheduled to make $330,000 at Oregon State as the running backs coach, not the special teams coach as well. They have somebody else handling special teams at Oregon State. At Boise State, Bhonapha was scheduled to make $320 this year, $340 next year, but not only does he have to recruit and coach running backs, he had to handle the special teams as well. That's quite a bit. That's a big load. Some guys would just as soon not have anything to do with special teams. Everybody pretty much would not have anything to do with recruiting, but that's not going to happen. So there is the financial picture. Now, the story gets a little thicker in that at Oregon State, they have gotten a bump of about $300,000 to the overall salary pool for football coaches. So Jonathan Smith, the head coach there, who's really got it going on all of a sudden and has coached with Bhonapha before at Boise State, and I would think he even coached with him at Washington. He knows what he's getting. He knows what he's signing up for. He likes it. And maybe he's even giving Bhonapha more money, because when Keith left the University of Washington, or wasn't retained by the new head coach there after Jimmy Lake was let go, Keith was handling both special teams and running backs at Washington for $450,000 a year. That was his last highest number. So does he want to get back to that number? Yes. Does he want to get back to the Pac-12 where there's more resources and he has to do a lot less? Certainly. If he goes back to Oregon State, gets a $100,000 bump over where the previous coach was at, and remember, the previous coach was at a number that is close enough, 330, and you add $100,000 to it, that's pretty much where he left off at the University of Washington, and he loses special teams. Okay, so there could be some of the financial picture. Now we know, I think Keith has several kids, so he's a family man. Uh, the housing situation's got to be pretty favorable in Corvallis, so that checks a box. I don't know what he ultimately did or didn't do in Boise in terms of rent, buy a house, stay in the residence inn. Maybe he still had a place in Seattle. I don't know any of those conditions, but you can see how deep in the weeds we're going for something that is really more of his personal matter. But was money involved? Yes. When you're an assistant coach and you've put in as many years as Keith Bhonapha has, you want to be respected and paid to what you think you're worth. And Keith Bhonapha was worth at least $500,000 as a assistant coach that really dominates running back recruiting in some circles in the West Coast. And so he wants to be paid like it. And going to Oregon State probably sounds like a good deal. We could factor in on some level, what did he think of what's going on at Boise State with Andy? What did he think that's going on now with the new offensive coordinator, Bush Hamdan? Well, he's got some experience with Hamdan. Hamdan was the offensive coordinator for 2018 and 19 in Washington when Bhonapha was there. I'm not saying there's any fire with this smoke, but you could read into that if you'd like. You can figure that out on your own, that he may have said, okay, you're bringing in Bush as the OC. I'm the RB's guy. We did or didn't get along. I know what he's going to want to do or not do. I can make as much or more money and lose the special teams gig and go live in Corvallis with a program that's on the rise back to the Pac-12 where they're losing SC and UCLA, and Oregon State could be on the way up and I can make more dough. Boise State's future seems to be in the Mountain West, where if we lose to a Mountain West team, we're seen as some demon that can't live up to expectations. All of those things could apply or not. But I do believe I can understand why Keith would do this. I think that it's a different time now where December is a big date to get recruits in the boat. Yes, there's still a date coming up in February, but that running back room is loaded at Boise State. So it's not like it isn't. There has been some turnover in the position. Winston Venable just, I think, basically decided for himself that he didn't want to be a college football coach and spend those kind of hours away from his family, and thought he had talents to make a living doing something else in another way. And so that's what he did. But as I look at it, any and all of those could be factors. I think they're all for consideration. At the end of the day, Pac-12, back to the Pac-12, back to a program on the rise, back to a program where a coach, Jonathan Smith, has got increasingly more and more power and authority and is on a roll. And I don't have to coach special teams anymore. It kind of checks some boxes. He may have enjoyed that as well. He was I think he was at Washington for 8 years or something. That's a pretty good run at a much different level of football. There's also much more potential to get a pay increase with the resources that the Oregon State program has. And it's not like Keith graduated from Boise State, went to school, played here and all that. But I do think he's been a good asset for the school. I hope he leaves on good terms. You really have no way of knowing how Andy would take something like this. So will they get somebody else? Obviously. How much impact will that person have? Let's see how good of a recruiter he can find at this date to jump onto this staff that is unemployed somewhere else. There has been other guys like Keith that have maybe come and gone to the program. I'd have to think more about which former running backs at Boise State that had some cachet could be out coaching and come back, and nothing really comes to mind immediately. I mean, guys like Jay Ajayi aren't coaching. I don't think Doug Martin is into coaching, but we'll have to just wait and see. And just because somebody played at Boise State doesn't always automatically necessarily mean he's the best running backs coach for the job. I'm sure Andy's going to look for the best person for the job and make the decision from there. But like I said, the best part about this is that the running back room is loaded. I would be shocked if any of them were to leave because Keith is leaving, but it is something worth watching just to see if that transfer portal, swings open and somebody goes with him to Corvallis. The other big news that's out there is Hank Bachmeier finally landing apparently at La Tech. But I want to talk to you first about Full Spectrum Health. I was listening to a podcast just today, and Tony Robbins, the great motivator, was on there talking about his morning routine. Tony's a little older than myself, but he gets into cold water every morning. He's a cold plunger. And since I've been working with Full Spectrum Health, I've incorporated cold plunging into my daily habits to make me feel better, more vibrant, have more energy, and help lower my body fat and make me feel better. I used to get into cold tubs as a football player just to ease the pain and to take the inflammation down. We also know that by cold plunging, you are sending blood through all portions of your body. So with Full Spectrum Health, I've learned not only about cold plunging, but how to lose some weight and get in better shape. So I would suggest you try this as well. If you want to know how to get there, it's pretty easy. You can go to fullspectrumhealth.com, and that's full-spectrumhealth.com. That's full-spectrumhealth.com. The diet piece is great. It's really based on keto principles. So I eat some veggies and meat in the morning. I eat bigger in the morning, and I'm really not hungry until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then it's again some more meat and some veggies. I eat eggs in the morning as well. And at night, it's really the more minimal. I'm really not that hungry. I mean, I can go out and play tennis and do a lot of different things. I don't get lightheaded. I'm losing weight. I'm firming up. Just keep watching. If you're watching the podcast, you see I'm going to hopefully look trimmer and trimmer as we go. So it costs less than $200 for the nutrition plan and everything. It's a slam dunk. Check it out for yourself, though. If you want to, you can email me with any questions. Hit full-spectrumhealth.com. That's full-spectrumhealth.com. Let's move on to Hank Bachmeier. The first news that we saw was speculation Hank could be transferring from Boise State over to Florida Atlantic. All right. I didn't know much about the offense there. Tom Herman's the coach, pretty accomplished guy. And he had to beat out a Penn State transfer if that was going to happen. But that ultimately is not apparently what's going on, because now, Pete Thamel, who has every scoop out there, is reporting that he's headed to Louisiana Tech. Last year, La Tech 3-9. They had a new head football coach, Coach Cumbie, an air raid disciple of Mike Leach. He's a Texas Tech guy. I think he still lives here in Fort Worth, near where I am. And in 2021, La Tech went 3-9. Cumbie comes in November of last year for his first season, just this last year, and 22, and he goes 3-9 again. So you would think he has a couple more years unless he completely flames out, but that would be enough to satisfy the next couple of years of Hank Bachmeier's eligibility. The thing I think that's optimistic, well, let's first get into the emotional ties that we do or don't have with Hank Bachmeier. I don't think anybody would say he's a bad guy. I think most of us like Hank Bachmeier. I think most of us are almost in awe of Hank's ability to take punishment at the position, because either he holds the ball too long or the protection breaks down, or both, and he keeps getting up. His toughness can't be questioned. His leadership and his personality, hey, I'm not 21, 22 years old. I couldn't tell you. That's immaterial. I'm sure there's a reason he wasn't voted captain of the team and all that, because most quarterbacks are. We can't run away from that. But I still think he was respected. So how anybody feels about this, if I were to guess and sort of gauge how the Boise State football fans feel about it, I think they want him to succeed. I think most people are like, I hope Hank Bachmeier finds some happiness and it works out for him. Ruston, Louisiana is a long ways away from where he is from in Southern California. And it's not Boise, Idaho. He's not going there for any of those reasons. They do take a lot of pride in playing football. And at times, La Tech's had great athletes and they can cut it loose. Now, this air raid offense may be more suitable for Hank Bachmeier, because I don't know how much thinking he's going to have to do. And I think that when Hank was in a drop back situation, he'd get into having to think a lot. He didn't want to throw the football at times his first couple of seasons until he saw the receiver being open. Well, that's not the case with this offense. You're throwing to a place and you got to get rid of it quick, and you got to get rid of it constantly. And so that ball's coming out. I think it's going to be harder to get to him. And that's good for Hank. And I hope it works out for him. It's just that as of now, they don't have a great team. We'll see what they do with the transfer portal and if Hank rises to the level of starter and all that. But I would say that if Hank has 2 more years there, Cumbie probably has 2 more years there. He's going to be given a chance. He's a smart kid. He can pick up this offense quickly. He's a tough kid, and maybe getting rid of the ball quick and not having to read and drop back and make different decisions is the best medicine for Hank Bachmeier. So let's hope so. Hope you enjoyed this edition of the Kingdom of Pod on the Believe Podcast Network. I also put this on YouTube. Just search out the Jeff Caves channel if you want to watch it and sort of follow along with it. I enjoy doing it, and hope you can shoot me an email, rate it, review it, pass it along. It's the Kingdom of Pod as news breaks. I'll talk to you again soon.